A record-breaking bust for federal officials has just been completed at the Port of Houston. The Department of Justice says Homeland Security Agency.
Have you ever imagined that a small, peaceful harbor town on Lake Michigan where tourists lick ice cream cones, kids pedal bikes along the shore, and the lake gently laps the breakwater each morning could actually be the massive gateway funneling tons of fentanyl and heroin from the Sinaloa Cartel straight into the heart of America? Behind that idyllic facade stood a respected port director, a man his colleagues trusted completely, who turned out to be the most cunning mastermind of all, weaponizing bureaucratic red tape while turning this charming little town into a major money laundering and drug distribution hub. Thousands of lives lost, hundreds of thousands of families shattered, all of it tracing back to quiet decisions made inside a government office. Today, I'm laying out the full story of Operation Northern Breakwater, the pre-dawn raid at 3 o'clock in the morning that finally ripped the lid off this horrifying truth. Stick around until the end to hear the whole shocking tale. And if this hits you as hard as it hit me, drop a like, share this video so more people know, leave a comment with USA or your thoughts below, and subscribe right now so you don't miss the next bombshell case. To those smuggling deadly poison into America, we will hunt down and eliminate every single one of you without mercy. This is not a threat, it's a promise. We have no choice left but to act decisively. At 3 a.m. on the western shore of Lake Michigan, the lake lay dark and mirror-still, with only faint ripples lapping against the weathered concrete pilings of Small Harbor. To the locals, this was just a peaceful spot, home to fishing boats and summer tourists savoring ice cream on the Trean sidewalk. Crime here rarely went beyond a few stolen bikes or teenagers sneaking beers after curfew. Yet, on that fateful morning, beneath the sickly yellow glow of sodium lights, something entirely different was unfolding in the shadows. Unmarked trucks rolled silently toward warehouses that stayed shuttered and quiet all day long. Massive container ships docked after midnight, their engines purring so softly they didn't wake a soul. In the thick darkness, hundreds of federal agents from multiple agencies lay concealed, watching every tiny movement. At exactly 3:05, the silence was ripped apart by a piercing shout. FBI, DHS, and DEA agents burst from their hiding places in unison. This was no routine customs inspection. It was Operation Northern Breakwater, a full-scale assault aimed at dismantling Route and Branch, a critical link in the massive drug trafficking network that had wormed its way deep into the American Midwest. The primary target of the operation was not some shadowy kingpin holed up in a lavish hideout, but the head of the port herself, Dana Whitford. For 4 straight years, she showed up to work just like any other civil servant, coffee cup in hand, employee badge clipped on, the familiar beep of the access door greeting her every morning. Colleagues remembered her as dependable, efficient, always calm in the face of whatever issue cropped up. Yet, federal investigators allege that behind those dry spreadsheets and routine port traffic reports, she was the mastermind who had quietly transformed a modest maritime facility into the key logistical gateway for poison flooding into the heartland. When the agents forced open the containers that had been fast-tracked through customs under Whitford's approved procedures, they found no legitimate commercial cargo. Instead, they uncovered a genuine chemical weapon stockpile, 3.8 tons of fentanyl, methamphetamine, and heroin meticulously packaged and bearing unmistakable markings of the Sinaloa Cartel. They seized nearly 100,000 counterfeit fentanyl pills along with 65 kilograms of pure fentanyl powder. Concealed among the drugs were high-end industrial GPS jammers sophisticated enough to make entire vessels vanish from every modern tracking system. This raid stands as stark living proof that drug cartels no longer confine their operations to remote desert borderlands. They have burrowed deep into our own backyards, into inland ports, and even seemingly harmless government offices. If you're proud of the brave men and women of DHS, FBI, and DEA who work around the clock to stop this flood of poison, show your support by sharing this and dropping a USA in the comments below. They need to know the American people stand firmly behind them in this fight. Dana Whitford wasn't merely turning a blind eye to wrongdoing. Investigators insist she was the architect, the mastermind who turned a quiet lakeside town into the logistical nerve center for one of the most dangerous criminal organizations on the planet. Her sophistication didn't come from guns or violence. It came from her flawless ability to hide in plain sight amid the dull machinery of bureaucracy. When she took over as port director in 2016, she didn't rush into sweeping changes. Instead, she patiently studied every inspection protocol, every grueling shift that left workers exhausted, every tiny human-created vulnerability. After months of meticulous observation, she began introducing what she presented as sensible modernization measures. She reorganized inspection schedules, adjusted shift allocations, all neatly packaged in crisp, professional-sounding reports. On the surface, these were earnest efforts to boost port efficiency. In reality, the changes carve out vast gaping blind spots in oversight. Vessels could now come and go with far less scrutiny. Most crucially, she established a dedicated fast-track customs lane reserved exclusively for high-priority shipments. This procedure sounded perfectly reasonable to the overseeing agencies who always perk up at buzzwords like modernization and efficiency. In practice, however, the pre-selected vessels breezed through clearance in under 7 minutes instead of the hours required by standard protocol. That lightning-fast lane became the ideal gaping vulnerability that the Sinaloa Cartel exploited to the fullest. As the southern border tightened under layers of checkpoints and patrols, the traffickers simply pivoted north. The vast expanse of the Great Lakes turned into an unguarded superhighway straight into the heart of the United States. Transporting drugs is only half the battle. The far more challenging part lies in laundering the enormous sums of cash generated from those sales. Dana Whitford understood this better than anyone. She constructed a sophisticated financial system right in plain sight, one that aroused no suspicion. The network began with 2 tribal casinos, located just a few hours' drive from the port. Investigators refer to her method as snowashing, a technique that proved nearly flawless in the frigid, snowy environment of the northern region. Night after night, the couriers would arrive at the casinos in the dead of night. They used fake identification to purchase high-value chips, played a few quick hands, then cashed out clean money. On paper, the dirty drug proceeds had been transformed into legitimate gambling winnings. Casino managers were paid handsomely to overlook any rigorous checks. Many regular patrons still remember those unfamiliar faces that appeared at odd hours, placed massive bets without saying a word, then vanished as quickly as ghosts. In Whitford's office, the agents discovered a spreadsheet that left them stunned. The figure of $4,700,000 was recorded every week from the casino operations, continuing unbroken for 4 straight years. This colossal sum flowed into shell companies with bland, innocuous names like Great Lakes Marine Advisors or Harbor Efficiency Group. Every invoice she issued was tied to a specific train that had arrived at the port. To any ordinary auditor, it all appeared to be nothing more than legitimate consulting fees. In reality, each invoice line item represented a shipment of drugs that had successfully cleared security checks. According to federal estimates, this single route alone had laundered $163 million in dirty money. While the cash flowed smoothly and undetected, communities across northern Michigan became heavily poisoned. Overdose deaths skyrocketed by 310% in just 3 short years. Rural counties that were once peaceful now had death rates 45% higher than those in major cities. Emergency crews began receiving calls from places that had never before known powerful drugs. From fishing boat docks at dawn to the public restrooms at small gas stations, they found themselves administering Narcan far more frequently than ever before. Overdose death rates had been rising steadily since the start of the century, but this period marked a true explosion. The drugs did not simply sit idle in storage warehouses. They spread rapidly outward to 27 small towns throughout the surrounding area. A highly efficient local distribution network operated by sourcing product directly from a northern supply line. The human toll was impossible to fully measure. 7 high schools stretching from Traverse City to Gaylord suddenly reported clusters of drug-related incidents. Teachers began noticing the sharp chemical odor of synthetic substances lingering in hallways and locker rooms. One veteran teacher later told investigators that she had witnessed students collapse right in the middle of class before anyone even realized what they had taken. Parents across the region described the same heartbreaking scenario playing out over and over. Their children would change gradually at first grades, plummeting, new and unfamiliar friends appearing. Then came the sudden middle of the calls from hospitals or police departments. Whitford's network deliberately targeted society's most vulnerable members. Northern Michigan had become a destination for large numbers of people relocating from rehab centers and correctional facilities, all hoping to start fresh and rebuild their lives. To the criminal network, these individuals represented the ideal workforce. Freshly released from prison, they were quickly recruited as couriers or decoys, paid in cash, or more insidiously in drugs themselves to ensure their ongoing dependence. They served as expendable pawns in a system that demanded a constant supply of disposable labor. Local businesses began noticing unfamiliar cars parked in their lots late at night. Neighbors reported hearing trucks rumbling through quiet streets at odd hours. No one realized they were witnessing the logistics operation of an international drug cartel in plain sight. Local police in the rural areas were severely overwhelmed. They grappled with painfully slow response times and an invisible enemy. They fought in the dark, completely unaware that the mastermind sat right inside a government office, wielding ultimate authority over every ship that docked at the port. The end came swiftly and decisively. Federal agencies had been quietly tracking Dana Whitford for many months. They uncovered financial anomalies through the Treasury Department, customs clearance schedules that failed to match high-rises cargo profiles, and a dramatic spike in overdose cases that aligned perfectly with her shipping records. Once the evidence crossed the threshold of certainty, there were no polite notifications or advance warnings. They launched a full-scale war. At 2:30 in the morning, the green light was given from the Regional Command Center. Just 10 minutes later, 620 agents from the FBI, DHS, DEA, and supporting units launched simultaneous operations at 41 pre-identified locations. Warehouses, vacation cabins, storage facilities, and the backstage areas of the casinos were hit all at once. Tactical teams smashed through doors, ripped hinges off frames, and surged inside with lightning speed. At least at 2 locations, the cartel's operatives put up fierce resistance. Gunfire erupted, and the firefight stretched on for 14 minutes amid a maze of steel shipping containers and stacked pallets until the last holdout either surrendered or fell. Coast Guard helicopters flew low over the lake, their searchlights sweeping blindingly bright to cut off small boats attempting to slip out toward international waters. Roadblocks went up swiftly along the major highways, intercepting pickup trucks loaded with drugs and stacks of cash. By the time the sun rose, dozens of suspects were already in handcuffs. The most chilling discovery came right inside Dana Whitford's office at the port complex. Agents uncovered $2,300,000 in cash neatly packed into waterproof rolling suitcases, along with more than $500,000 stashed in various other hiding spots. It was clear she had kept a ready-to-go escape kit prepared at all times. They also seized 14 access cards to restricted port areas that belonged to no official employees, along with a fully loaded 9mm handgun lying within easy reach. Dana Whitford herself was not taken into custody until 7 hours after the operation began. She had been hiding in a rented cabin near Torch Lake. When agents surrounded the property, she stepped out quietly with both hands raised, her expression weary, but showing neither resistance nor defiance. The harbor is still there and operations will gradually return to normal. Fishing boats will keep docking and tourists will come back in the summer. But Operation Northern Breakwater has left a hard-learned bloody lesson that can't be forgotten. From 1999 to 2022, the United States lost more than 727,000 lives to opioid overdoses. Those deaths weren't random or natural. They followed the exact flow of the nation's infrastructure. They exploited domestic sea routes, highway corridors, and rail lines to spread it all. And it all depended on insiders within the system. People who turned public roadways into the very bloodstream carrying the poison. Drug cartels no longer needed to risk treacherous desert border crossings. They could move horizontally through small ports, regional airports, and quiet, unsuspecting towns without raising alarms. Corruption never announces itself with fanfare or steps into the spotlight. It slips through everyday signatures, routine administrative approvals, and dry consulting invoices. No one has the time to scrutinize every detail. A single port director armed with perfectly legitimate paperwork and just enough authority can quietly undermine an entire wide region. As agents sifted through mountains of evidence, one question haunted them relentlessly. The biggest lesson from Operation Northern Breakwater is that corruption and crime never announce themselves loudly or obviously. They hide in the most ordinary positions, cloaked in the appearance of reliability and the familiar machinery of bureaucracy. A port director with his morning coffee, access badge, and Excel spreadsheet can quietly open the floodgates for tons of poison to pour into communities, stealing thousands of lives. This lesson reminds us that vigilance must start with every single citizen. Pay attention to the small changes around you. Question processes that seem too smooth and convenient. And always support law enforcement. Only when society as a whole stays awake and alert can we truly protect our families and our future from this invisible threat. How many other Dana Whitfords are still sitting in similar positions across the vast Great Lakes region? How many mid-level officials are quietly reshaping the area just because thick envelopes were placed in the right hands? We think about people inside the system who aid and abet drug cartels. Should they face the same level of legal responsibility as the kingpins themselves? Do they deserve the maximum sentences? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This is the real face of the war we're up against. Stay vigilant at all times.